Hey guys, welcome back to Football United TV. This is the F.I.T.A show, Football in the Americas. Tonight I'm here with my friend Johnny and my friend Matteo as well. His partner at Golasso Kits. We're going to be talking about some Central American, Caribbean, Canadian football. So stick around right after the intro. 1 second. Here it is. All right, and we're back. Okay, so if you guys have been watching the show, like this particular segment of Football United TV, you know that I've been blessed with a lot of guests that know a lot more about the subjects that we talk about than I do, and tonight's no different. We're talking about a subject that I have very little clue about it. So luckily, I have these two guys here. Johnny, my good friend from college, my co-host of this show.
What's
And
up, guys?
and tonight we have Matteo. You guys have also seen a lot of Golasso Kits content here. This is Johnny's partner in that. So thank you so much for being here, my man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on, and let's talk about some football.
Let's. So yeah, Johnny, tonight you have the wheels more than usually, my man. So we're gonna begin wherever you want to begin, Matteo as well. You guys have the wheels. I'm
I
just
want to
gonna.
begin with what are you wearing, John?
Me,
We see it, yeah.
Guatemala.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
Yeah,
Los chapines.
those
I
Chapines.
have
Yeah,
Jamaica shirt on. I think this is like the the year that they played in the Copa America and the Gold Cup. What year was that? You'll remember better than I do.
2015.
Yeah, yeah.
2015. Yeah,
They did a pretty good job in both tournaments, actually.
Well,
yeah.
if you guys have been to Miami, you probably know that it makes sense for me to wear this too. So
And plenty of
Uh,
Jamaicans and Guatemalans here in Miami as well.
yeah.
So,
there you go.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I was thinking we could start in Central America since they have the most interesting and historic tournaments within the regions that we're going to talk about today. I guess the easiest way to do it is maybe geographically in Central America, going from bottom up, which would give us Panama first. And so, just a quick overview. I don't think we're going to spend too much time in each of these, but um, the Panamanian League, I don't think is of the strongest in Central America, but the top clubs have been doing a little better in the recent years. The two biggest teams are Tauro FC and Árabe Unido. But there's a club called Independiente La Chorrera that actually had a few good runs in continental competitions lately. Um, so I think that's a pretty good overview, superficial overview. I don't know, Matteo, if you have anything to add off the top of your head right
Yeah,
now.
I think Panama Panama has kind of, I think it's really interesting to give like the context of the country and football there. I think Panama has a kind of particular case where they absolutely love soccer, love football, but they don't support. There's no culture of supporting the club teams whatsoever. So they go mad for their national teams, but the league never really takes off because at the end of the day they can't really get butts in seats. And they've tried to professionalize things. They're serious people doing serious work there. And it just doesn't take off because commercially it doesn't end up making sense, and that's the difficult part of it. And I think a fun fact about soccer in Panama is that they have a stadium, and their national stadium is also called the Maracana, and it's like it looks like
Okay.
a miniature. It looks like a miniature Maracana, which is really cool. So yeah, I think that's a couple, I guess, fun facts for Panama, and obviously they made it to their first World Cup in Russia, scored their first goal, and was a big deal for them. Was one of the biggest things ever for a country that small. It was inimaginable, to be in a World Cup. So yeah, I mean, they haven't been even playing professional football in Panama for even 50 years. So it's crazy to see also with so much little support how far the national team has gone.
Yeah, and I'd say that's very different from most of Central America, where at least the big teams from the capitals actually get a lot of butts and seats, and the attendances are very, very decent. So up next would be Costa Rica. This is, I think, arguably the best league in Central America. It definitely has two of the biggest teams in Central America, being Saprissa and Alajuelense, both from the capital or the metropolitan area of the capital, San Jose. And then thirdly, but I think just a little below them, at least in my mind, maybe it's closer than I think, is Herediano. That would be the third power of Costa Rica. Saprissa and Alajuelense are multi-champions, not only in their country, but outside in continental competition. And it's a huge rivalry within the country. And
Saprissa was the last non-North American team to win the Champions League in 2005. So
yeah,
Okay.
it was huge. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's immense. So beating
they
the
lost
Mexican
against,
and American clubs.
yeah,
that's
they
impressive.
lost against Liverpool in the Club World Cup final, Club World Cup semifinal. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which I mean, for a Costa Rican team, I don't even have to go into detail about how crazy that is. So
I remember I had never heard of the team ever, and then I saw it on TV, and it's like really. They used to have a really cool purple color, and like dragon logo, like big dragon logo. I have the shirt here somewhere. I bought it off like a Reebok outlet store in Mexico, and I just remember like just that color and that dragon being so badass. Like it was so cool.
yeah, they rebranded for a short amount of time and then went back to burgundy, but they were purple for that period of time.
Yeah.
So up next is Nicaragua, that of the Spanish-speaking countries in Central America. I would say it's the weakest league. Their biggest teams there are I never know how to pronounce. Well, Real Esteli. Yeah, what's the other one, Matteo?
Dirian Hen, Cacique Dirian Hen.
Dirian Hen, exactly. Yeah. And then I always think that Walter Ferretti is kind of a big team there, but it actually, if you look at like their records, they're really not that great. But I think they have a pretty big following. And like I said, these are probably the most inexpressive teams in Central America. They usually don't do great outside of their country. And kind of, I don't want to call this a fun fact, but a fact is that Nicaragua had one of the two leagues that never stopped during COVID, along with Belarus. For a while, still with fans, and then they retracted, and they had closed doors, but continued the league throughout the pandemic. So
there's a club that I think is worth mentioning, which is Managua F.I.T.A. They're a pretty recently founded club. I think I believe it's owned by like businessmen and stuff. So, and they're in the capital, of course, of Managua, and they won their first championship in 2018, and they've been participating in a couple of continental competitions recently, and really gaining in like popularity. They were in the famous COVID final that John just mentioned. So yeah.
Yeah, actually, this is a fun fact. There's a team from Nicaragua called Junior that was founded by a Colombian who's a fan of Junior Barranquilla.
Okay.
And the crest is very similar. Gave the team the same name. and that's where that comes from. There's also a Juventus in Nicaragua. I don't think it was founded by an Italian, but a fan of the Juventus in Italy.
I love this movement of paying homage to clubs. I know, like, as I always try to squeeze it in, right? Like, I'm pretty sure there's a team in, how do you call it? How do you say Oceania in English? Is it
Oceania.
Oceania? Do they
Yeah.
they say that?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's a club in Oceania that pays homage to Fluminense. You can see it in the uniform, right? Like, it's not often that you see that pattern of maroon, green, and white. So I always find that really cool. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's move on. There's a lot of Real Madrids, Juventuses, River Plates, and Boca Juniors all over the world.
Barcelona's,
Barcelona's.
Santos. There's so many Santos. There's a
Oh,
Santos in Costa Rica, for example, that we just talked about.
Yeah.
yeah.
There's a
Yeah, from
Santos
Brazil,
in
that's definitely the big one, yeah.
yeah. There's a Santos in Jamaica, which we'll get to eventually. So
And
yeah,
Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah. Next up, Honduras. The big Honduran clubs are probably the ones that rival the big Costa Rican clubs the best in continental competitions. The biggest club is Olimpia, has about half of the first division titles. And then other very important teams that are worth mentioning are Motagua, that's also from the capital Tegucigalpa, as the big rival of Olimpia. And then in the second biggest city called San Pedro Sula, there are two more teams called Marathon and Real España. And those are kind of like the four that more or less compete for the title, but Olimpia being by far the strongest.
I'd add a fifth, which is Vida from La Ceiba. La Ceiba is like a really big soccer city, so they really support that team. And they haven't won the championship in like 50 years, which is mind blowing. It's similar to the curse of, we just talked about Costa Rica, about Cartagines, which is also arguably the
like
fourth
a mid team.
Yeah. So Cartagines has a story that like they haven't won the championship because some betrayal or something like that, and some curse that was cast on them, and it's been years and they've never been able to win. So it's like a thing. So it's the same thing with Vida in Honduras.
Yeah, and I was talking about like homages that are being made. There's a Real Sociedad in Honduras, which is almost kind of a random team to pay homage to, but we're here talking about the the Central American soccer, so we're not here to judge any alternative
Absolutely.
choices, are we?
Absolutely.
So next up, if we continue this order, we're going to go to El Salvador. Salvadorian, that's another, I think probably the country that has the most disparity between the fanaticism and how well their clubs actually do. And I think their league is pretty well like leveled. There isn't a team like Olimpia that dominates. The biggest champion is a club called FAS, FAS. But just like what was that?
Los Rojos.
Los Rojos, yeah. And not too far behind, Alianza FC, which I think is actually the most popular club. And Aguila is also probably closes out the big three. And then Firpo and Isidro Metapan are, I think, right below those three. So for a very small country, especially in terms of size, not really population, but in terms of size, I think it's a good amount of big teams that level out or that compete evenly within the National League. But again, that doesn't really translate outside of El Salvador.
Yeah, similar to what we were just talking about. Santa Tecla FC is also a new team from Santa Tecla. I think they're probably founded maybe 15, 16, 17 years ago. And they've won like 4 championships already, and they've qualified to the Champions League. They've played against Seattle Sounders in the Champions League. So that's also a team that's been gaining some prominence, and it's from, again, a really small city that supports the team heavily in a little small stadium. It's really fun to see. I think, if I remember correctly, they beat Seattle Sounders in the Champions League 2-1 at home, and then they held them to a draw for the longest time in Seattle, and then it ended up losing. This is like 2019 or 2018. Yeah, so sometimes they're competitive. If you remember the famous Tigres team that defeated Palmeiras in the Club World Cup, which was the best, performance for a CONCACAF team ever in the history of a club championship. Alianza was eliminating Tigres at home until in the 95th or 96th minute, Tigres' goalkeeper scores the goal to to take Tigres to the next phase of the Champions League. But Alianza was eliminating one of the biggest team in the continent, budget wise. So they're competitive. They're hard to beat at home, and they show up like John said. But it's a crazy story and it hurts my soul to think that goal in the 97th minute, 8 months later, eliminated my team from the Club World Cup. But yeah, it's like John said, their support for these clubs are massive. For example, Honduras, talking about Champions League as well. When there was like the bubble Champions League and they played in Orlando, I think about 5,000 Olympia fans traveled just to sing outside the stadium.
Wow.
5,000 in Orlando, in the middle of Orlando. So it's like that, like incomprehensible, like blind love in Central America. Their club competitions, which we'll talk a little bit about more later. It's really fun to see. It's really, really fun to see.
Yeah, I'm almost ashamed that I didn't mention Santa Tecla, because let's not forget that El Loco Abreu played for them for a very short amount of time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
At the very end of
if you
his
guys
career.
in Europe don't know who El Loco Abreu is, like, look him up, because he's a really, really interesting character. He always wore a shirt underneath the
jersey.
Underneath his jersey, exactly. That was, I think it had the emblems of all the clubs he's been through, right?
Yeah, which
So,
he holds the record for the most clubs played for. He's played for in almost every country in South and Central America. But
big
he's mostly
Uruguayan
remembered
player
outside
as well.
of. What was that?
He's played in the national team as well for a couple of years.
Yeah, no, that's I was gonna say. He's mostly remembered outside of South America for the 2010 World Cup. He was part of that team. He shot one of the penalties against Ghana in the quarterfinals.
There you go.
So he played for Santa Tecla as well. And to close out Central America, we'll go to Guatemala. The Guatemalan League is also, it's actually dominated by two clubs, the two teams from the capital, Comunicaciones and Municipal. I don't think it has a clear third power. I think that kind of rotates. Right now, I think it would be Antigua. But Xelajú is also an important team. Coban, Guastatoya recently had a good run in the Concacaf League. Santa Lucia is a very small team that recently won the league. That shocked the country.
And actually, ending. No, that was a crazy ending, right?
Santa Lucia, a story similar of the Alianza Tigres, like last second goal against one of the giants, and they qualified for their first continental competition. That was very recent. It was 2021, right? It was last year. Yeah. And the Guatemalan teams do relatively well. But whenever we're talking about continental competitions, and we can go in soon about who does best, who has the most titles and all that, but it's almost always the Hondurans and the Costa Ricans that are consistently up there, at least.
Right.
Okay, so I think that wraps up Central America. I think we can go into the continental competitions now. And this is where Mateo's gonna help me a little bit, because CONCACAF is one of, I don't want to say the only one, because I think Asia has a similar thing where it has 4 continental competitions. So Europe just added its third, but CONCACAF already has 4. The
Yeah.
lowest level of this is the Caribbean Shield, which is a continental competition for the Caribbean countries that don't have a professional league. So that's pretty much everyone except Jamaica, Trinidad, Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. That's correct, Mateo. I don't think I.
I think Trinidad as well plays there.
I think I
Yeah,
mentioned.
no,
Okay.
yeah, he said Trinidad, yeah.
Yeah. So every country aside those 4, and then the champion of the Caribbean Shield gets a spot to the Concacaf League. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I actually skipped. So the CONCACAF, so the Caribbean Shield. Sorry, the Caribbean Shield is the tournament for the Caribbean nations that don't have a professional league. Then there's the Caribbean Championship, Cup Championship. I always forget. There's so many C's in there.
Yeah. There's like 5 C's. The championship goes straight to Champions League.
Okay. So the third tier will be the CONCACAF League, which is Central America and Canada. And then the strongest tournament, which we've spoken about previously in this podcast, is the CONCACAF Champions League. And basically I think that the 2 Caribbean Cups obviously have a big importance for them, for those countries, for those clubs. But more than anything, it's a filter to then put these clubs into bigger competitions with bigger clubs in Central America, Mexico, and the USA.
Yeah.
I don't know if Matteo agrees with that statement, but
I agree, and it's just a question of there's no other way to add representation for these clubs. You can't have a continental competition without everyone participating in some way, shape, or form. Even if there is the disparity, you need to have at least one representative. So that's why those cups were created. But it's cool to talk about. I think. The history of this tournament and the 3 different eras that are like defined in history. When there's the Champions Cup era, which went until 2008, and there were so many different formats that were played in this competition in this time. There was sometimes divided by the 3 different regions. Sometimes there were just the champions played. Sometimes the champions didn't want to play and teams got invited to play. It was never really something very solid. And this is where you have kind of teams from all over the place being champions. Like, most notably, I think the coolest story for me, and I know John will agree because we've talked about this, is Robin Hood from Suriname. So like, if you look at the honors, let's say, like, Robin Hood from Suriname made to 5 finals and never got to win one, but they made it to 5 finals. It's crazy. There's teams from Haiti that won the Champions League, maybe the first couple ones, but those teams have history in that competition that later became what it is today, right? So in the middle of what we have today and the Champions Cup era, which we do have MLS teams that have won the Champions League. It's just that today, taking a page from John, is today, there's the necessity of always creating hype upon things. It's always the biggest, the best, the first. So if someone tells you, hey, Seattle Sounders are the first MLS team that win the Champions League, no, that's not true. The Galaxy won it before. It was a different format, yes. It was a different reality, yes. But they won the continental competition, the highest continental competition that was played that year. So they try to here we can. There's another conversation. This is the conversation for another day. But here in the U.S., you see it a lot in the Premier League. In Brazil, not so much, thankfully. But you try to erase what happened in the past. No, the past should be respected. And then
the English League didn't start in 1992.
Yeah. It went through a period where of different formats, but under CONCACAF actually like fully running it in 2008, and that ran until 2017 with like that was like an actual group stage. So with group stages, Cruz Azul, sorry, Cruz Azul would have to travel to Curacao, to Trinidad, to so a lot of times it was like groups of 3 or group of 4, and sorry,
All
there
good.
was a problem with that because there were a lot of like deadwood games, right? And these Mexican teams and the American teams would have to play against. They would have to travel to Nicaragua. They'd have to travel to Jamaica. They would have to play there once every group stage. So they didn't really like that. It packed the calendar for them. So they changed the format. And today, for me, this is what we should have all over the world. Is what we have today in this region is just the freaking champions of each country, the champions and the runners up, and that's it. The creme de la creme of the region. So it's today the format is 16 teams, and those 16 teams play home and away until the final, and the last final was won by Seattle with record attendance, and an MLS team finally won the Champions League in the new format. So yeah, I think it's important to kind of give the context of the history of this tournament and how it's evolved over the years, and just to talk about like specific beef, about this. So you guys were John was touched upon kind of the teams that won from Guatemala, right? So there's a huge debate because Comunicaciones is like the joke, like in Brazil we have the Palmeiras doesn't have the Club World Cup. So in Guatemala, what it is Comunicaciones no tiene Continental, right? Comunicaciones doesn't have a continental competition. Because in 1978, the Champions League was stopped for some reason, and they gave the champion to each region. So there was a Caribbean champion, a North American champion, and a Central American champion. So until this day, Comunicaciones says, no, we're champion of 1978 Champions League. But Municipal, who won it in 74, says, no, you guys has never won it, doesn't exist, doesn't count. So it's good. It's interesting to know that banter, within each the rival teams and the countries. And today, nowadays, for a Central American team to win the Champions League is absolutely unimaginable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just
much
I
like
want to cut in real fast. Well, first of all, when it comes to your format suggestion, mate, as an Arsenal and Fluminense fan, I hope no one listens to you because like that would like it's looking hard already. So that would make our chances really slim. But I just want to shout out really quickly because these are the two guys behind Golasso Kits. Stick around because we do have a special promo for you for any Central American, Caribbean, Canadian paraphernalia that you're looking for. They ship worldwide, so stick around. We're gonna give you a special promo later on. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, I think that that was very well put. And what one thing that Matteo touched on, I think we could talk about too. So the second level of continental competition, CONCACAF, is the CONCACAF League, which is between the Central American clubs and the Canadian champion, right? The champion of the Canadian Premier League, which we'll get to soon enough. And that tournament has been a success exactly because of the local rivalries, not only amongst the team from the same country that happen to play against each other, but because they do have a sense of belonging. Central America does have a very strong sense of unity, sort of like the European Union in a way. Politically, they mirror themselves a lot in Europe in that sense. And so, and that competition has been a success too, because everyone wants to be the champion of Central America. Everyone wants to be the biggest team in the region. That means a lot to them. And we're going to talk shortly about the new format of the CONCACAF Champions League that's going to change all that. But I think it's a shame because I think that's what soccer is about, is local and regional rivalries. And I think the CONCACAF League proved that. It finally gave Comunicaciones a continental competition. last year. And previously it was dominated by a streak of Costa Rican teams who had won it. Olimpia had won it before that from Honduras. So there was a good amount of rotation amongst the champions, which is always interesting for those neutral fans that are watching. And yeah, I mean, it's easy to talk. I mean, I think everyone knows that we're not talking about soccer at its highest level, but it's soccer at its purest form. If you understand what I mean by that, it's really very raw passion, and it makes a lot of these games worth watching. Definitely.
One thing I wanted to say, John, about CONCACAF, the new Champions League, is that I agree that it will remove like an actual important tournament, like something to play for to win. But it's going to be replaced. We'll talk about it later, but it will be replaced by regionalized cups. So you'll have even more of your Saprisas, Motagua, Olimpia against Comunicaciones. You'll have even more of those because they'll be pitted against each other every single year, just against each other. There won't be the Caribbean or the North American teams, and then that will be the first filter to the final Champions League. So.
Okay.
So,
but is that going to be? Is there a trophy for that? Is there a title?
I don't know. I think so. I think so, but then it would have to be much more condensed. I think, right? Because the Champions League will now run the entire year.
Yeah, I think it's the last of the. Well, the African Champions League is also pretty short, so maybe that's the last one now. That doesn't run all year long because the Asian Champions League runs all year long. The Libertadores for the last, I think 10 years ago, maybe less, like 5-6 years ago, decided to run all year. So yeah, and I think the last thing to mention in the Caribbean before we move forward is, which I hope some of you have thought of, is Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is a territory of the United States, so there is some money in there. Even though it's a very small country. Puerto Rico's big sport is not soccer. However, they have had professional teams that have
baseball,
competed.
Right?
What was that?
It's baseball, right?
Yeah, baseball, and after baseball, there's probably another 2 or 3. Like boxing is huge, volleyball. So, but they have had, and they have a semi-professional league of their own. But every once in a while, they have had a professional team that has gone to play in lower divisions in the United States. The most famous one is the Puerto Rico Islanders that used to play in the NASL. And actually, Matteo, correct me if I'm wrong, made it to a CONCACAF Champions League semifinal, correct?
Yes, semifinal,
Wow.
which is unbelievable.
The Islanders,
was 2009. Was 2009.
Which isn't even that long ago.
They lost in the semifinals to Cruz Azul on penalties.
Okay.
They beat Cruz Azul 2-0 at home in Bayamon. And then Cruz Azul had to win 3-1, and then it went to penalties, and Cruz Azul won 4-2. But can you imagine if a team from Puerto Rico was one game away from going to the Club World Cup? Playing in the USL at the time, which was like, if you think the USL is obscure today, imagine what it was 13 years ago. You know,
I thought it was the NASL that they were in.
No, USL.
USL, okay. But
Puerto Rico Islanders never played in the NASL.
All right, it's sorry, and that brings us, I guess, that's a good segue to the second professional team that Puerto Rico's had, which is Puerto Rico FC. They played in the NASL, and fun fact, they were partially owned by Carmelo Anthony, who is of Puerto Rican descent. Yeah.
Big NBA player, legend from the Denver Nuggets. Just letting you know if you don't watch the NBA. By the way, did we touch on Canadian club level football?
I was gonna get there next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Feel free, my man. Show's yours.
Yeah, and I think that's it. The Puerto Rico FC doesn't exist anymore. It closed doors along with the NASL. So Puerto Rico right now doesn't have a professional soccer team, but they still have their semi-professional national league. But that's it. And the problem with Puerto Rico, I think, is that they again, not only is soccer not the best sport, but also the inconsistency. It's hard to get behind a team when you've seen 4 or 5 before it closed doors after 5 years. It's hard to invest yourself into something is gonna not last. And I think that sums up Central and Caribbean soccer. So now we can go to Canada.
Yeah. And I'm gonna put it, even though Canada's bigger than a lot of continents, I'm gonna put club level back.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, Canada.
And then it'll kind of relate back, but to continental level. But Canada, so I think most, if not, I mean, the vast majority of people who think about soccer in Canada at club level think about the 3 teams that play in the MLS, right? The Vancouver Whitecaps, Montreal CF, what most people probably still know as Montreal Impact.
I refuse to call them that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but same. Montreal Impact, and Toronto FC. That we mentioned a good amount, and these 3 clubs have been mentioned a good amount in previous podcasts here when we talked about the MLS and big players being signed. Insigne is going to join Toronto FC soon. But very recently, Canada finally now has its own professional league called the Canadian Premier League. I think they're only in their 3rd season, correct, Matteo?
I think fifth season. This is their fifth season. Yeah.
5th season already, yeah. So, and there's some interesting clubs. There's a couple of clubs that had already been playing in lower divisions in the United States, like Edmonton FC, like Ottawa Fury, that now is owned by Atletico de Madrid. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
4th season. Okay. Ottawa Fury, obviously a team from Ottawa, got bought by Atletico de Madrid, and now is Atletico Ottawa. Okay. So now they rebranded to match those colors, so red and white stripes and all that.
Yeah. They have some of the coolest kits.
Yeah, they really are. They're all much like Adidas sponsors all of the MLS. Macron sponsors the Canadian Premier League, and Macron does a good job at not using one template for every team. They each have a very unique identity. Okay. And so it's a small league. It's only 10 clubs, but the league lasts for most of the year, excluding obviously the winter. That's very rough in Canada, and I think it's a little hard to make a direct correlation between that and the success of the Canadian national team. But I don't think it's a coincidence. I think soccer is really starting to pick up there, and obviously that has a lot to do with the clubs in the MLS. But now they have a league to call their own, which I think is very important, and I'm sure they take a lot of pride in.
Yeah, and we had recently the club that has been kind of dominating that league is Forge FC. They won in 2019 and 2020. And they were actually, I think in 2020, they were a goal away from qualifying to the Champions League. They lost to a Haitian team by shocked. This Haitian team shocked them. Ended up going to the Champions League. So 4FC ended up next year going to Concacaf League instead, and then made it to the Champions League. And then they played this year against Cruz Azul and got eliminated against Cruz Azul. But I think it's pretty cool to see a team from a recently formed league match up against one of the biggest teams in the continent, which is Cruz Azul. So that was pretty cool to see. And of course, they got beat, and Cruz Azul probably didn't play at their maximum potential, but they held their own, for a while. So it's really, I think, the one takeaway that I have from the CPL from watching some teams play against others in my lifetime is really, and I'm sorry, this is going to sound super cliche, but soccer is a game of 11 guys against 11 guys, anything can freaking happen. And the level of play is getting closer and closer every time. And like John said, I think it's not a coincidence. There are guys having opportunities to play professionally that wouldn't have a chance to play professionally. And these guys are showcasing their talents. And eventually a bunch of guys are going to come out from this, a bunch of guys are going to appear and continue to feed the system. And there's a huge debate in Canada right now for the implementation of a women's league. You know, they're the freaking Olympic champions, which we'll talk about whenever we talk about the national teams, and there's no women's league. It's crazy to think of.
Yeah. It's
Think
not.
of that.
Do they
So
just play with the Americans when it comes to women's football?
Yeah, most of them play either in Europe or in the NWSL. No,
yeah,
and
but there's not even like an NWS.
nope.
Oh,
I think we lost
sorry.
Matteo there. Well,
Okay, he's back.
you're back
My internet has been really bad this week, but there's not even an NWSL team
in Canada.
in Canada. So
Wow.
a lot of people argue that it would be detrimental to add an NWSL team in Canada at this point because it would just be like putting a band-aid on the problem instead of trying to solve it and creating an actual league. So it's fun to see what's happening over there, and I just hope that the league is solvent enough, right, John? Because we've seen this story a lot here in the U.S. and I think every year, just being alive for now for a new established league is already motive to celebrate.
Yeah. I think another cool thing to mention about Canada is that is how it qualifies its team to continental competitions. So the Canadian Premier League champion today qualifies for the Concacaf League, which is the second tier on the continental level. And how they define who goes to the Concacaf Champions League is actually by the Canadian Championship, which is a separate tournament that brings together the Canadian teams that are in the MLS, the Canadian teams from the Canadian Premier League, and actually Canadian teams from semi-professional regional leagues that they have.
I learned that this week from you, by the way.
Yeah, and it's been expanding. It used to be just a cup between the teams in the MLS, so literally like those three playing against each other because under the eyes of FIFA, the MLS is an American league, so it wouldn't be able to qualify a Canadian team to a continental competition. And then they kept expanding, and so that's kind of how that's decided, which is I think a very unique way. I don't think any other country has that. And so we're actually in the quarterfinals of this year's Canadian Championship. The two lower division teams have already been eliminated, but we have Vancouver Whitecaps playing against Cavalry, Pacific FC playing against York United. Those are two teams from the Canadian Premier League. So at least one Canadian Premier League team is going to be in the semifinals, guaranteed. We got Halifax Wonders playing against Toronto and CF Montreal playing against Forge FC. So obviously the teams in the MLS have more money, they have bigger players, they're more structured, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a knockout competition. It's just quarterfinals, semi-finals. So anything could happen. They are just one elimination game, I think, except for the final. And so yeah, so anything could happen. We could see a lower division team in Canada in the Champions League next year.
That'd be wild.
That would be pretty wild. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna quickly show you guys how the. Okay, make sure I'm not doing anything. How the Concacaf qualifying works, right?
Yeah, for next year. So Matteo can go in more details, but CONCACAF completely reformulated the competition. They actually expanded it. And so this is going to be a good graphic to give you guys an idea of how many berths there are and how they're divided amongst the team. Obviously, MLS and Mexico are get the most amount of berths, and then it slowly becomes less and less as you go down the CONCACAF rankings.
Yeah. So ultimately, what you can see there is that there's a CONCACAF Central American Cup that delivers 5 berths. There's a Caribbean Cup now that delivers 2 berths. The U.S. Open, which is the U.S. National Cup, delivers 1. The Canadian Championship, which is the Canadian Cup, delivers 1. Then you have 2 from the Leagues Cup, which we'll talk about in a bit. A little checkmate from our friends at CONCACAF. The CPL has two berths, champion and second place as the main competition in Canada. MLS has four, and then Liga MX has five. These are berths in the first round because additionally, you have the Liga MX champion qualifying directly to the round of 16, the MLS champion qualifying directly to the round of 16, the League's Cup champion, the CONCACAF Central American Cup champion, and the CONCACAF Caribbean Cup champion. Those teams qualify directly, and then there's a first round. So, but before this first round, CONCACAF decided to reformulate the Champions League, and what they decided to do was exactly what John said: pit local rivalries against each other. Why? Because they were feeling very threatened from a couple of movements that were happening in the football ecosystem. For example, MLS and Liga MX doing more and more collaborations, doing more and more tournaments, like a tournament called Leagues Cup. So the how do you say the saying, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. So instead of going to war against Leagues Cup, they said, you know what, guys? Bring this here. Let's legitimize it. Let's put it into the Champions League. So the champions now, between this tournament that was invented from thin air and could have become a problem, instead of becoming a problem now, they put two of their biggest markets to play against each other. So you have US and Mexico teams playing against each other for three berths. Really cool. Local rivalries pitting against each other. You have North America taken care of. Okay. Now we move to Central America. They saw that there was this summer tournament being played, and commercially was an incredible success. Why? Because you had Comunicaciones from Guatemala playing against Motagua from Honduras, and Olimpia playing against Saprissa, and 30, 25, 40,000 fans going to this summer tournament to watch, to see who's the best Central American team. They're like, there's something there. Again, instead of creating, something like this, why don't I create something similar? They created a Central American Cup to pit these teams against each other constantly, so that the best Central American teams are weeded out through this club competition and go to this first round. And the same thing, but with much lesser or without any commercial implications, was made for the Caribbean. So pit them against each other, have them filter, and then we go to the proper Champions League. But there's an important detail here, Marley and John. I want you to count how many Liga MX's team can hypothetically qualify to the Champions League.
9.
Excellent. How many teams play in the Mexican League?
16.
Yes, perfect. You're very sharp, my friend. So how do you kill any talk of Mexican teams playing in the Copa Libertadores? By qualifying 9 of their teams to your continental competition. Now, who is Mexico going to send to the Libertadores? San Luis? Are they going to send Mazatlan? I don't think so.
Yeah. Juarez?
So it's a checkmate to any conversation that opens the door to Mexican or American teams returning to the Copa Libertadores. Anyone that tries to argue this is someone that's trying to farm clicks or views, because it's impossible due to this format. It's simple. It's that. It was a checkmate play by CONCACAF to the Mexican teams. But also, the important thing to think about this, which you can't forget, is Leagues Cup. It was a tournament that didn't exist, that was created from thin air to make money, that they legitimized and put inside this process. Why? So everyone can make money together. So they're very, very smart commercially too, They're very, very smart.
Yeah, I mean, it's needless to say that the money in North American soccer is inside the United States and Mexico. Obviously, Canada is a very rich country, but within soccer, there's just very few markets. So yeah, they're just really milking that, like incredibly so.
And it's funny because we talked about the recent history was they had an expanded group phase, and they're like, oh no, it's too much games. Then they shrunk it to 16, and now they're expanding it again.
Yeah, 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 and that's yeah. I think the CONMEBOL, like Mexican teams in Libertadores, is that's almost like 90% of this conversation, right? It's not recent that we've been hearing about Mexican teams wanting to return to Copa Libertadores. So that definitely worried Concacaf. They can't lose Mexican TV money, right?
It
So
was, I think it was always a bargaining chip for the Mexican teams, you know,
yeah,
always.
yeah. Okay.
Clever.
Yeah.
Well, I thought we'd get to this subject sooner, but well, there was a lot to talk about, and thank you guys. But now we got to move on to. Is there anything more we need to touch on continental or club level before we get to national teams? No.
Um, I think we mentioned everything that is of interest.
Who's your
Awesome.
favorite Central American team, John? Out of all Central America?
Antigua,
That's a good answer. Love it.
Antigua. Antigua is the most beautiful city in Guatemala. I recommend everyone visit at least once in their life.
Oh, who's both of you guys' favorite player from North or Central America, excluding U.S. and Mexico,
At the moment,
ever?
all time.
No, from all time.
I was always a fan of Carlo Costly from Honduras, but I recently created a an appreciation. Well, he's Ecuadorian, but Anangono.
Yeah.
He's Comunicaciones his striker. Just what he did in last year's Concacaf League was. I love those strikers that technically aren't great, but just goal after goal after goal after goal. Love those guys. Yeah.
For me, it's I've always have like a little thing for midfielders. So Bolaños for me was always a workhorse, like the guy in midfield that will just outrun anyone, just run the whole time. And I'd say also another guy that was great was Wilson Palacios, who played for Tottenham, won the FA Cup with Wigan. What a great like number 5, like destroyer. What a player. But Bolaños, man, he was always touted to go to Brazil and never went. And a guy that I can't understand that didn't do well in Santos was Brian Ruiz. Like,
Yeah, good
what a
player.
player. Santos needing like a classic number 10 like him, and they never just like he never got a chance. And he was making so much freaking money. Like,
Yeah, like-
so he was one of the best played players in the country.
Yeah,
Played 5 games, 6 games.
I always liked quick mention McDonald for Alajuelense. Big fun player to watch. Fun. I remember watching him play against the Whitecaps, I believe, when Alajuelense made it to the final. Sorry, the other way around. The Whitecaps beat Alajuelense in the semifinal to then lose against America. Anyway, McDonald, Costa Rican midfielder, was a lot of fun to watch.
And Celso Borges, whose father is Brazilian, and coaches is one of the most famous, like, of the Brazilian coaches that like have a career abroad. I think he's one of the, if not the most successful. And actually, the other day, Pioli, who doesn't even coach Milan anymore, right, John? He doesn't coach Milan anymore.
Yeah, he does. He does.
Oh, he still does.
He's gonna win the league this weekend.
So Pioli actually said like, "Oh, I watch Guimarães' América de Cali to inspire myself for my set pieces," you know. So Guimarães is another, like, we're Brazilian, so another Brazilian that is involved in Costa Rican soccer. He coached Costa Rica to their first World Cup, I believe, and then his son plays for them.
Awesome.
Celso Borges, yeah.
Awesome. All right. We're gonna have to hurry up a little bit when talking about the national teams. And by the way, speaking of players, I'm assuming Canada is probably going through their best batch of players ever, right? Like with a lot of really exciting talent. I'm gonna show you guys the whole table. It's also like they also have a really tricky format as to how teams get to the World Cup. Well, not if you're the U.S. or Mexico, but and from now on, I'm assuming Canada is going to be in this spot for a long time as well. But just give me 1 second, guys. I'm finding the right
Yeah, I
window
don't know
here.
much about the previous Canadian team to make it to the World Cup, but
Yeah,
from what I've heard, this one is the best of all time.
yeah, yeah. I
Definitely.
mean, they have Alfonso Davies, who's a really good. Well, is he a fullback or a wing back?
He plays as a
Sometimes a winger.
midfielder for Canada,
He's
right?
brilliant.
Yeah, yeah.
Brilliant,
So
brilliant.
great player. Jonathan David scoring goals for fun this season as well. They have a lot of really exciting talent. And yeah, so this is the table from the last eight, right? Like the last port of the qualifying for the World Cup. But you have all of this before. Who wants to get into this? Go ahead.
I can talk a little bit about this. So this is just a way to filter all those small island countries that are in the Caribbean that
Yeah.
just obviously morally and for the integrity of the tournament have to participate. But we all know, like, the U.S. Virgin Islands are never going to play a World Cup, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of that preliminary round that eliminates a lot of these teams. Canada ended up in this first phase just because of their FIFA ranking, and but they obviously breezed through four wins in 4 games, 27 goals for, one appearance. So that says it all.
You got to watch Alfonso Davies play in Bradenton, Florida, at IMG Academy, which is like a high school stadium, against U.S. Virgin Islands. Was a treat to see.
Imagine, yeah.
A $120 million player.
So I think for every group, if you just go to Group D real quick, scroll down a little more, yeah, it was pretty much the favorite of every group that went through,
Yeah.
except for Group C, where Guatemala actually ended getting eliminated by Curacao in goal
Wow.
difference. And this I remember clearly. They were supposed to play, like, Curacao had already played their last game, and Guatemala
Not even goal difference, Johnny. It's goal scored.
goal scored. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
They tied in goal difference.
Yeah.
Guatemala was actually playing against Cuba, already eliminated Cuba, and needed to win by a 3-goal difference and won 2-0. They weren't able to score those 3 goals and ended up eliminated by Curacao.
Curacao, who at this point was supposed to be led by Gus Hiddink, none other than Gus Hiddink, who had fabled spells with South Korea and
Russia.
Turkey, Russia, like,
Yeah.
no, I don't think Turkey, but Russia. Yeah.
Australia.
You see,
Australia.
you see the difference in level, right? When you see that most groups have a team that haven't even scored. This one has 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, St. Lucia actually withdrew, but
I
but
think-
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
there's a
that's-
massive disparity. You know,
Good
some of
point.
these countries are literally like an island of like a few thousand people.
Yeah.
Within those few thousand people, a lot of them don't even play soccer, don't watch soccer. So it's
Yeah.
I think this was the only big shock was this one right here, John, was St. Kitts going ahead of Trinidad and Tobago. I think that was like the big surprise of this stage.
right. Maybe
Wow.
even more than Curacao, Guatemala. You're right.
Trinidad and Tobago tied their last match against Bahamas. You can see Bahamas made 1 point, and that was in 0 goals, and that was in a 0-0 tie against Trinidad and Tobago, the strongest team in the
Wow.
group. That led them to not play against El Salvador, which would have been a pretty, I guess, pretty,
Yeah.
leveled match
Yeah.
to go on. And then the last thing I'll say here is just moving on to like the second round was that Curacao went against Panama as heavy favorites. Like, it's easy to forget now, but whenever this was played in 2021, Curacao came off of an amazing Gold Cup that they played really well, lost to the US 1-0 in a semifinal by small little details. Then they dominated Nations League, came here, qualified above Guatemala, and then gave Panama the fight for their lives. And this made everyone think that Panama would do really poorly in the third round, because it was like these guys have had a terrible Gold Cup, absolutely terrible Nations League, where they didn't even make it out of the group, a group with like Barbados and Cayman Islands, something like that. And then they did so well in the octagonal was so surprising to see. And a lot of people try to paint Panama as like a crumble, because like the last 4 or 5 games they made like 2 or 3 points, but it actually was like, how did Panama get so far and so close to qualifying to the World Cup? Like if you look at the table, a game and a half, let's say, they're in.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely a surprise. Yeah, it was kind of a shame to see three teams from the Caribbean actually make it to the second round, and then not actually make it to the final round. Haiti, especially, I would have thought that Haiti would have given Canada a tougher time, but then Canada uh, proved itself to be the strongest team in the continent. So not a lot of luck from the Haitians.
Yeah, and they didn't have. I mean, for Haiti specifically, there were no fans, and I think that's such a big part of the atmosphere in that stadium, is the typical like Central American Caribbean heat, the fans in that old stadium. That stadium holds like 32,000 people, which is insane. That made a difference for sure for all of these teams, right? I think for El Salvador, the same for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the last thing, just to wrap this up, that's worth mentioning is, and Matteo, I know you know more about this subject than me, is about how a lot of Caribbean nations have been trying to convince some of the sons and grandsons of immigrants in Europe to come play for them. Right, Jamaica being, I think the one that was going to get the biggest names.
Jamaica, a lot of players from the Premier League actually confirmed and will be playing. It was a shame. I think they're the biggest disappointment of the octagonal, right? Because
Yeah.
on paper they have a really strong team with well-established players in Europe, well-established players in MLS. They have some pretty good local talent actually. Every tournament there's some really interesting player that pops up, and that was a shame because they reacted too late. They fired the coach way too late, and then it was kind of too late. But Antonio like did really well in the qualifiers. But there's other countries that are kind of doing the same thing. Canada as well. Canada has a couple of players already playing on the team, like Eustáquio, like Steven Vitoria, like Adekugbe. All of these guys are like second nationalities. But I think another fun one that we should mention or keep an eye on are. It seems like Mariano is finally going to play for the Dominican Republic, so that should be cool to see. And they're trying to get Junior Firpo as well, so
Okay.
that should be fun. I mean, we're seeing it with Curaçao, how powerful they can be with all the Dutch rejects per se. They made a great team. And then just to, I think, contextualize that, and I don't want to go too long, but like on the Canada situation, it really is like the golden period for soccer in this country. I'll take this to my deathbed, and I guess I'll be proven wrong or not in December. But Canada's a quarterfinalist in this next World Cup.
Wow.
But like no question whatsoever.
What's
They're
the group? What's the group they're in?
they're in a pretty tough group too.
I would have to look
I think
to.
that at any given day, with their starting lineup, they can play head to head to with any team in the world. I say that with all the confidence in the world, because they're one of those teams that has such a strong 11 that's been playing for so long. That like all the movements are automatic, all the passes, the every players know where they are. And the 12th player is probably terrible, but that 11 is really strong. It's really hard to break down. They play with five at the back, really structured, so versatile with so many attacking threats. There's so many attacking threats. Joe David. That's not even to talk about. I always confuse him. It's Joe David, and the guy that plays with him is who's actually scored more goals than Jonathan David this year. I forget his his
Yeah,
name.
sure.
Kyle Laren.
Aaron.
You have Davis. You have Eustáquio, who plays for Porto. What a freaking player is this Eustáquio? So I think they're such a good team. Such a good team. They're much more ready for the World Cup, in my opinion, than Mexico and the US.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's another two quick things I want to mention before we wrap this up is one, the cool thing about Canada too is that their coach actually used to be the coach for the Canadian women's team.
Yes.
And so that's a very cool career path that this coach took. I think it's very uncommon.
Yeah.
And obviously he was very successful. He won the gold medal in the Olympics, correct? With the
Bronze medal.
bronze medal. And
They
so,
lost against the US in Old Trafford with like a bullshit call that until today, like no one understands. In 2008, the 2008 Olympics. Yeah, and he transformed that program, and then they gave him the chance to train the national team, and he's doing great. That's another coach that I think after this World Cup cycle will definitely get a chance at either a medium sized team in Europe or an MLS team.
yeah. And the last things I wanted to say was I guess it's worth mentioning how terrible Honduras did with 0 wins, 7 goals in 14 games. And then going back real quick to European players with Caribbean descent. I think it's always kind of mentioned in these like alternative soccer discussions about how Clarence Seedorf and Davids actually both have origins in Suriname. And I think Suriname is also one of these countries that are trying to get these Dutch players of Surinamese descent to start going back there. And I hope it happens. It only makes the region more competitive. You know,
Absolutely.
so
I think it's exciting times for the whole region of the world when it comes to football. I mean, I know a little more about Jamaican players because there's so many players in the Premier League with Jamaican blood. They're either like from Jamaican parents or even like born in Jamaica. I know that a young player from Arsenal, just to bring it a little bit closer to myself, really exciting winger that's supposed to be doing stuff with a professional team soon. Omari Hutchinson, he's gonna play a couple of friendlies for Jamaica. I think they're gonna find some success because a lot of that second tier of English talent is a lot of the first tier as well. But the first tier
Yeah.
goes to the English team. But I feel like Jamaica is gonna grow a little bit. I'm pretty confident that the next World Cup they're gonna put in a bigger fight.
I hope so, because also you have the situation next World Cup with how many berths are they going to give, right?
Exactly.
Because they already confirmed that the 3 hosts get automatic berths. So now what happens? Like without those 3 that you see in green, man, it's going to be a dogfight. It's going to be beautiful dogfight. You can throw Haiti in there. You can throw maybe Trinidad in there, Guatemala. Like it'll be a dogfight. It will be
Yeah.
really, really hard to see what happens. And I today I wouldn't say with any confidence that Costa Rica can beat New Zealand. I don't know. I don't I don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Costa
mean,
Rica has been really poor. Like has been one of those teams that kind of they grind it out 1-0 wins, like the classic like let's see how we score a goal and then just defend and a prayer and Keylor Navas at the back
how's
and that
that?
was it.
And that is kind of how New Zealand plays too, right? So we'll see how that matches.
Yeah.
Is it Joel Campbell, the guy that used to play for Arsenal?
Yes. Oh my God, what a player, man! I think that's my favorite Central American player. Now that you mentioned it, what a player!
How's
What a
he
player!
doing? He's probably on his 30s now, right? But
Yeah.
how?
So last I know, he was playing for Monterrey. I don't know if he left
Okay.
recently. Let's check. And then, but he played a game against Costa Rica. Had a super difficult triple window in the end. I think it was literally Canada, Mexico, and the U.S.
Yeah.
And he like wow, like carried the team on his back, like ran like that player that's like in the middle of all the defenders, like holding the ball up, then he's center, then he unbelievable. Yeah, he's still with Monterrey.
Okay. Big
So
club.
he's the crazy thing is he's still 29.
Okay.
Holy
Okay. He's
shit.
my age.
Yeah, it's insane to think of. It's insane.
Wow. Yeah, I feel like he's been playing for like 20 years already, but
Yeah, I
If you
hope.
told me
right.
he was part of the Invincibles, I believe you.
So, what do you
Exactly.
guys think are the chances that like he eventually plays in Brazil because of the 2014 World Cup and like that image of him?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past a Brazilian team to do that.
A Fortaleza or something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe that second or third tier of I don't see any clubs from Rio or São Paulo bring him in.
I take
mm,
him, man.
You take at Palmeiras right now, mate? Come
I
on.
think I think I take him.
yeah, over Atuesta.
Yeah, it's a different position, but yeah, whatever. We're talking about crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I
But
wonder
anyway,
how
guys,
many Americans have played in Brazil, though. Yeah, that should be a fun research project.
let me go to always the last part of our show here, where Johnny and Matteo this time are going to be talking about their website. Where is it? I have it set up here. 1 second. Come on, should be up here.
The anticipation is killing me.
Right? Like everyone knows what's coming. I opened it. Oh, here it is. The name was confusing me because I was already in the Costa Rica sector.
There we go.
But I'll go wherever you guys tell me to go. But
Yeah,
this
just
is
go
sorry,
in
my
North
internet's
America.
taking a little while.
There we go. So, guys, again, for those who are watching for the first time, me and Matteo, who is finally joining me today here. This is our website, golazokids.com. We sell vintage and new soccer jerseys as well as other soccer paraphernalia. We sell things from all over the world, but since today we're talking about Central America and Caribbean and Canada, we're going to focus on that. If you just click on North America on the sidebar, you can see that we have actually stuff from a lot of these countries.
Yeah.
So that's that it's a cool place to come get some unique stuff. You know, there's not a lot of places where you can get a Barbados national team jersey. So check it out. There's a promo code for everyone watching. It's FITA C, just the letter C. That stands for Central America, Caribbean, and Canada, just all in one C. So FITAC, all caps at checkout. You get 15% off. Browse around. I'm sure there'll be something you like. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Do you want to add anything, Matteo? Want to go
No,
somewhere here?
I
No.
I, I want to check out that 1998 Jamaica T-shirt. That's what I want to see. Like that's what I was thinking about. Like we have so many cool stuff that like I just right now like that I don't even know about. So whoa, there's one just like mine. I didn't see
Yeah.
Yo,
2015 World Cup. So I
this
didn't
one's
see
so
that.
dope.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I
Yeah.
love this one from I'm assuming this is the biggest club in Costa Rica, right? Like you probably touched on it. Alajuelense.
Yeah. One of.
Really,
Yeah.
really cool jersey. Really cool. But yeah,
Yeah.
guys.
There's a Saprissa purple we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, no, I was actually looking into that jersey before. Yeah.
Yes, we have
Cool
T-shirts, we have
colors.
scarves. There's a little bit of everything. Again, browse around. It's a lot of fun. You can really go anywhere in the world. But with your promo code FITAC at checkout, you can get 50% off any of the North American goods that we have.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, we have
It
a
is.
lot of brand new with tags, Guatemalan. Man, that Municipal like wine jersey right there, like I don't know how we aren't sold out of those yet. Yeah,
Yo, that looks fire, man.
yeah, with the retro crest and gold, it's beautiful. It really is.
Yeah, no, that looks awesome. Looks really awesome. Yeah, guys, check it out. Sven, if you watch this eventually, I know you're a big lover of these. Yeah, these look fantastic.
Yeah, let me
Fantastic.
mention. Sorry, we ship worldwide as well. Doesn't matter where you're watching from, we ship to your country. So there's
Yeah.
that as well.
Just let me write that down really quickly. I mean, it was quite simple, but in case you missed it, it's FITA C. There it is. Just let me click on it and show it to you.
Mhm.
Type that in, and you get You get a good 15% off anything from Central Canada. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being so smart, for knowing so much about football. And again, I love this. I love this partnership. I'm so proud when I show the Golasso kids content because I just think it's so cool. So thank you once again. Thank you, Johnny, for introducing us to Matteo. Thank you, Matteo, for being here for the first time. I hope we get you back as many times as you feel like talking about football. You sound like you're from that like Johnny DNA that appreciates football from all over the place. So my
It's
man, you're
funny
always
because
welcome.
thank you so much for having me. It's funny because before the call, I'm like, John, what are we going to talk about? I don't know anything about Central American football.
We literally could have gone on for another hour.
Exactly. Yeah. I lovingly call these guys football nerds. I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys. So yeah, guys, thank you. I don't think I'm gonna be doing Gunners from all corners tomorrow. It's not just because Arsenal sucks right now and that's doom and gloom. Like I'm busy. But Maddie and I are gonna be talking about the last round of the Premier League, even though I'm gonna be depressed for that. So that comes on Sunday. And then we're gonna start talking about transfer news, all of that. And Johnny and I are gonna be here every 2 weeks. I forget where we're gonna go next, but that's already planned. You guys will know that very soon.
We're going to go back to South America. We're going to wrap up the group stage of Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana. And by that point, we'll already have the draw for the knockout stages for both those tournaments. So yeah, it'll be fun.
All right. Well, Johnny knew. So yeah, that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Let me put the outro here. And stick around for the content we have. Follow these guys on follow their Twitter and check out the webpage, please. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you.